This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Mesilas Yesharim tells us, the more well-known something is, the more obvious something is, the less people think about it, the more they take it for granted. This is true regarding all the well-known narratives of the Chumash and certainly the Gemara. The most well-known account about Tisha B'Av is the story of Kamtza bar Kamtza. This story is the most misrepresented story in the entire Talmud. It's fundamentally and simply understood to mean there was a man who had a friend Kamtza and an enemy Bar Kamtza. Bar Kamtza was invited, and the man said, "Get out of here," and he offered to pay for the meal, and he refused. The host kicked Bar Kamtza out of the meal. And the Bar Kamtza went ahead and he tattled on the Jewish community, and the Romans dispatched a general to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. So this is understood as the classic situation of sinas chinam, people who can't get along and are arguing about petty matters. Why can't we all get along? And that's true, we should all get along. But that is not the message of the story of Kamtza bar Kamtza, and that's not even what happened. The Gemara says in Masechta Yuma, Daf Tesam Beis, that the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, because of baseless hatred. And Harav Avigdor Miller Zechus HaBracha asks the most basic question. The Gemara Yevamah says on Daf Yudalad Amud Beis that the students of Shammai and Hillel accorded with each other ahava v'reyos, love and friendship. Josephus says that the majority of the Jewish community at the time were students of Shammai and Hillel. Now, if they loved each other, so what? When was there ever hatred? You can't hate someone that you love. The Gemara says they loved each other. Therefore, says Rav Miller, it's just a plain mistake to interpret the Gemara in Yuma that the temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred as baseless hatred among the Jewish community. It's just simply wrong. It's fairy tale. It's just buying what the media is feeding you. What happened? Josephus himself writes that the Jewish community was at peace with each other, even the students of Shammai and Hillel. It was the Sadducees and the Herodians who they couldn't get along amongst themselves, and they hated the observant Jews. It's not a matter of discord among the observant Jews. The observant Jews, they got along, they loved each other. Yes, there were differences. It doesn't say anywhere that we have to agree about anything. You could hold your shita, I could hold my shita. You could wear your clothing, I could wear my clothing. You could have this opinion, I could have that opinion. There's no mitzvah in the Torah to agree. It's not even an ideal to agree. Where does it say anywhere that we need to agree? But we respect each other. The sinas chinam was not among observant Jews. It was from the Tzedaikim and the Herodians amongst themselves and to us. Josephus writes, the behavior of the Sadducees toward each other is wild. Their dealings with those of their own party are barbarous, as if they were strangers. And certainly to the Chachamim. That's what motivated the Tzedaikim to attack Yerushalayim with the forces of Agrippas, and to bring the Romans to crush the sanctuary. Rav Miller even writes, there are many well-meaning writers applied sinas chinam to the observant Jews. It's a serious error. It's against the Gemara and Yevamos. Says Rav Miller, based on Josephus, Bar Kamtza was a member of Agrippas' party. He was invited to the party of the Perushim in error. And when he was thrown out, he took up cause against the Chachamim and used it as a pretext to instigate against our community. And in fact, Rav Miller says, nowhere does the Gemara say that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of the sin of Bar Kamtza. There was no sin. The sin was only that under the circumstances they should have allowed his carbon to be brought so as not to endanger the community. If there was no sin of Bar Kamtza, we couldn't have him. No Chacham would eat a meal with a Bar Kamtza who was an agent for the forces of Agrippas. Of course not. Says Rav Miller, the same way the Gemara says that because of Tarnagov, Tarnagalasa, Tor Malka was destroyed. It wasn't the sin of that situation, it was the circumstances. And the same way the Gemara says that because of the side of a wagon, Beitar was destroyed, not because of the sin, because of an event that happened. So because of the event of the story of Bar Kamtza, there was no Aveira involved. That's not Sinas Chinam. The Sinas Chinam was from the Tzedaikim to the observant Jews. And therefore, whenever there's disagreement and there's this knee-jerk reaction of call to Jewish unity, that's not always what is called for at the time. It's very often misplaced. Even in our times, what's going on by Artscroll Tisha today, the reaction is not, okay, Jewish unity. First comes MS, and then comes Shalom. It is important to know the reality of the story of Kamtza Bar Kamtza and what the outside world would like us to think the story is. And therefore, it is not always the call of the day to say Jewish unity is what is required. Before Jewish unity, we need to have Jewish education. First, we need to know right and wrong, truth and falsehood. Once that is established, then very often unity is a natural byproduct. Certainly, we love all Jews, but the call of the day, as Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch would say, is first comes the MS, and then comes the Shalom. And to just naively take the word Sinas Chinam at face value, we have to know the circumstances of the times. We have to know who the Sinas Chinam was an accusation against. And when all of Klal Yisrael unites under the banner of genuine allegiance to the Torah and to the leaders of Israel, that will bring the unity that will usher in the coming of Mashiach. This is how Rav Avigdor Miller presented and taught the episode of Kamtza Bar Kamtza. I want to thank my friend Dr. Philip Roslatsky for bringing this to my attention. And if somebody would like to learn about this subject in greater depth and detail, Rav Miller writes this in his Sefer Torah Nation, in the second volume, in the final chapter of his Sefer. These are all things we need to think about because history repeats itself. And as we see in our time, yes, there's a call for Jewish unity, but we have to understand it in the prism of the events that have unfolded throughout our history. And just as in those times, the security of the Torah nation was in jeopardy because of Sinas Chinam, that is what we're seeing in our own times. So yes, we hope for peace, but a peace governed by the dictates of the Torah HaKadosha. Wishing everyone an easy fast.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.